There have been and there continue to be lots of gaps in the U.S. when it comes to the standing of America's minorities. There's the wage and income gap. Ever heard of Cesar Chavez and the actions of the National Farm Workers Association? Look it up. There's the education and achievement gap. Ever heard of Brown versus the Board of Education? Look that one up too. There's the housing gap, the incarceration gap, and the healthcare gap. Ever heard of the Tuskegee experiment? Yeah, that was that research project that involved doctors infecting unsuspecting black men with syphilis. Men that once infected were not treated because, after all, the goal of the study was to determine what happened when syphilis went untreated in humans. Yeah, you should probably look that one up too. Today, a minority healthcare gap of sorts continues, and one manifestation of this gap is seen when it comes to how the pain of black and brown people is, or should we say sometimes is not, treated. More on that in a little bit, but first, let's take a closer look at the minority healthcare gap by examining sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease, a predominantly black disease that is characterized by recurrent pain crises, is to date incurable. This is Cynthia's story of living with the disease. Born and raised in the Bronx, Cynthia Clark, a sickle cell sufferer and now a single mother to 3 children, lives in central New York State. Cynthia tells us when she gets her sickle cell pain crises, man.
Oh, I always say when I'm in crisis, it's kind of like getting hit in the back from behind with a bat, over and over and over and over again. It's basically, it leaves you flat.
Cynthia was diagnosed with sickle cell at the age of 6 months, much to the surprise of her parents.
My mom and my dad both had the trait, but they are from Central America, Guatemala, and they didn't do testing back then, so they didn't know that they had the trait until they had me.
Like many parts of the Caribbean, Central and South America, Guatemala is a country that is home to lots of people of African descent. Sickle cell disease? Well, like we said, it's primarily a black disease. Interestingly, sickle cell disease actually results from a genetic mutation meant to confer protection against mosquito-borne malaria. Endemic in many parts of Africa, Plasmodium falciparum, the parasite that causes malaria, is introduced into the bloodstream by a mosquito bite. Once in the bloodstream, the malaria-causing parasite invades the body's oxygen-carrying red blood cells. Once in the cells, the parasite hijacks the reproductive machinery of the cells, using it to rapidly reproduce before then leaving obliterated red blood cells in its wake. Plasmodium falciparum, however, is largely unable to attack the red blood cells of people with the sickle cell mutation. So if only one of your parents gives you one mutated sickle cell gene, you only carry the sickle cell trait and you're actually protected against malaria. For those living in areas where malaria is endemic, that's one hell of an advantage. But if each one of your parents gives you a mutated sickle cell gene, now you've got 2 mutated sickle cell genes and you've got a problem. That problem goes by the name sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease is the most common inherited blood disorder in the United States. Yet, many doctors who care for adults have little to no experience dealing with the disease. This is something Cynthia found out after moving to central New York.
I had to find another primary doctor, and she didn't know what sickle cell was at all. She said she just heard about it, and she had to read about it, and it was trouble from the beginning because in part of refilling my medication, she couldn't understand why I needed my pain medication, and I automatically got red flagged.
Ew, red flagged, huh? That's never good.
Her assistant called and said, well, in your chart, it is noted that you have all these pain narcotics. I had 2 actually, so I don't know what all these were, but I had 2 pain narcotics. And she said, the doctor isn't usually used to prescribing so many narcotics. And I said, well, in my chart, it's noted that I have sickle cell. And she goes, I understand, but still.
But still.
Because I also have AVN on my hips, so I am pretty much in pain every day.
AVN, or acute vascular necrosis of the hips, is a complication seen in many people with sickle cell disease. Over time, poor blood flow to the hips of sickle cell sufferers can cause portions of the hip bones to necrose or to die, resulting in constant and at times debilitating hip pain. So why was Cynthia red flagged? Well, for a long time, most people with sickle cell disease didn't live long enough to reach adulthood. So, doctors who cared for adult patients rarely saw patients with sickle cell disease. This lack of exposure resulted in a healthcare knowledge gap of sorts. Consider a 2010 study that found that the period immediately after adult sickle cell sufferers have aged out of pediatric care is when they are at highest risk for death from sickle cell-related complications. No longer under the care of pediatricians who've seen and treated sickle cell disease on a more regular basis for decades, adult sickle cell sufferers find themselves under the care of doctors who have far less experience recognizing and treating their unique issues. And this puts many adult sickle cell sufferers in serious jeopardy. Don't believe us? Well, listen as Cynthia shares a story of what recently happened to her when she encountered another doctor who was unfamiliar with treating sickle cell disease. A doctor who wrongly assumed that the chest pain Cynthia was experiencing when she presented to a local hospital was just a manifestation of a sickle cell pain crisis.
I had chest pain and the side of my chest, and I knew it was different because it didn't feel like a normal crisis. When I went in at first, they did an x-ray, they didn't see anything, and I was treated just as a pain crisis. I was in a hospital for about a week and I went home, but the pain was still there.
With the pain persisting, Cynthia, having been admitted to hospitals many times before with sickle cell pain crises, told the doctor caring for her that something was different this time. Nevertheless, chalking her chest pain up to a simple pain crisis, he sent Cynthia home with nothing more than pain medications. A few days later, her chest pain still no better, Cynthia went to another hospital.
I went back to the hospital and they did a CT scan and they found out I had a pulmonary embolism in my lung. So, yeah.
Yep, Cynthia's chest pain was the result of a potentially life-ending pulmonary embolism, or a blood clot in the lungs.
That was scary. That was scary.
God, the universe, something or someone was looking out for Cynthia that time.
Like, I could have just passed out in a house and not know, so that was scary.
But this near miss wasn't the only time that Cynthia, hospitalized with a sickle cell complication, encountered doctors who were unfamiliar with treating her sickle cell disease. Cynthia recalled another hospitalization for what actually was a sickle cell pain crisis.
I had one doctor, like I said, say, 24 hours, you should be okay, I'm discharging you. And the nurses pretty much looked at him like, are you crazy? That's not how it works. So I got another doctor who I thought would kind of be understanding, and he wasn't. He gave me IV pain meds for half a day and then changed me over to PO meds and was planning to discharge me the next day. When questioned by both myself, my mother, nursing supervisor, he said that that's how the protocol, which there really wasn't a protocol, there never hasn't been a protocol, goes, and that he wasn't changing anything. I was literally in pain all night crying, and he would not order any extra meds. He wouldn't, there was no oxygen given, anything. And yeah.
Now, just for the record, a huge part of treating sickle cell pain crises is hydrating the patient with IV fluids, giving them supplemental oxygen, since after all their oxygen-carrying red blood cells are not working properly, and controlling their pain, since physical and psychological stress from pain can make sickle cell crises more severe and longer lasting.
Heartbeat faster if you slow down your breathing and control your breathing.
Listen as Mobb Deep rapper Prodigy, who recently died at the age of 42 after suffering complications from sickle cell disease, describes the importance of treating pain when you have sickle cell.
So the strong pain medication that the doctor prescribed me, like if I feel it coming, I'll take one of those and then it just go away completely and I'll be all right, you know what I mean? But if we take like a lesser medication where it's not so strong, I'll take it, the pain still lingers and it has the opportunity to get worse, you know what I mean?
So why the hesitation to treat Cynthia's pain more aggressively? Lack of experience on the parts of the doctors caring for her? Yeah, that probably played a role. What about a belief, though, that Cynthia was better equipped as a black person to handle pain? Sound crazy? But maybe. Consider this. A study out of the University of Virginia found that 25% of white doctors in training, when surveyed, said that they believed that black people were biologically less apt to feeling pain than white people were. Or another study out of Emory University in Atlanta that found that black people who presented to local ERs with serious long bone fractures were 33% less likely to be offered narcotic pain medications than were white people with similar injuries. So, might attitudes like this, when coupled with an overall lack of adequate understanding about sickle cell disease, affect the care that sickle cell sufferers receive?
Yeah, they have that. We can tolerate pain more. No.
Now, I always wonder, and it may be impossible to really kind of tease between the two, but when people are not wanting to treat your pain adequately, do you ever feel that it's more a matter of them fearing that you're pain-seeking versus it's more a matter of them having a racial bias towards you? Or do you truly feel that it's just really a combination of the two and it's very difficult to pull them out?
I mean, I've seen patients who have, rheumatoid arthritis, some who fallen and hurt their back, get better treatment, better pain management, I guess more, I don't want to say sympathy because I don't want a pity party when I get sick, but they actually hear their concerns out more, and that's an unfortunate situation.
Not surprisingly, there's a great deal of frustration in the sickle cell community about what many perceive to be the inadequate treatment of sickle cell sufferers' pain. Some doctors lack sufficient knowledge about the disease. Other doctors may consciously or subconsciously believe that some black sickle cell sufferers aren't experiencing as much pain as they actually are. And then some doctors may fear that sickle cell patients looking for pain relief are really nothing more than drug-seeking narcotics addicts.
The big gripe right now in the community is being labeled drug seekers. A lot, if you go down my timeline in groups that I'm in, it's just constant. Doctors not wanting to treat the pain correctly because they either fear or they think or they judge that the person has been here too often, or the person should not have that much pain, the person's not in that much pain, and we really do get labeled as drug seekers and people who are just coming in for pain meds. And a lot of people with sickle cell don't want to go into the hospital at all because they don't want to deal with that treatment.
And what can happen when sickle cell sufferers don't seek medical care in a timely manner, if they seek it at all? Cynthia is active on many sickle cell sufferer social media groups, and she shared some of the disturbing stories that she has both seen and heard play out.
Some of our, some of patients have died. There are some who have died stroke symptoms. There are some heart-related, lung-related pneumonia.
And you think it was because they didn't want to seek care? I was going to ask, is it that they didn't want to seek care, or is it that they're coming in with symptoms that are being ignored?
I think it's a little bit of both. They go in later than when the symptoms start because they don't want to deal with it. So once they finally do get to the hospital, it's worse than it was when it finally started. And then when they do get to the hospital, sometimes the doctors treat it just as a regular pain crisis. They won't do like a regular blood work. They won't do chest x-rays, stuff like that. They'll just treat them with pain medicine and send them home.
So what advice does Cynthia have for sickle cell sufferers who don't feel that they're being properly cared for?
It definitely is. Have somebody advocate for you, advocate for yourself, especially in the hospital, because sometimes, like with my pulmonary, something's wrong and they don't want to hear that something's wrong, and God forbid something happens. So just speak up, let them know.
And if you've spoken up, let your doctors know your concerns and still feel like you're not being heard?
Honestly, when in the hospital, nurses are more sympathetic.
Yeah, I think that's always the way. It's always the way.
It's easier talking to them and telling them you're in pain and having them try to explain to the doctors. Doctors just not trying to hear it. No offense.
No, take it. I own it. Yeah. That's why people love nurses. We get like a gift certificate on Doctor's Day. They get a whole week. I was going to say this Doctor's Day and Nurses Week
exactly.
for a reason. So there you go. So do the nurses tend to advocate well for you?
Yeah,
and for other patients with sickle cell?
They definitely do advocate better. Okay. I guess because they see you when you're crying in pain, and they kind of see the brunt of it when you go through it.
The doctor just gets a call like, "Hey, she's having
Damn, nurses are always stealing the glory. It's supposed to be a team effort, guys. Share." We get Doctors Day, they get Nurses Week. We always get second guessed. They get this awesome Johnson & Johnson Salute to America's Nurses ad campaign. It's just not, you know, never mind. Nurses are kind of awesome, actually. One of us even married one. We firmly believe that time and understanding and education and consideration, and really most of all, simple moral, spiritual, and intellectual evolution all work together to close the gaps created by inequality of all types. It's like Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Well, first of all, just thank you for taking the time out and listening, because that's basically the big issue, is having people listen.
You're welcome, Cynthia. If what you heard from Cynthia moved, motivated, or inspired you, please share this video and consider making a donation to the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, the Sickle Cell Society, or the American Sickle Cell Anemia Association. We provided links to all three organizations' websites. Until next time, we're the Twin Doctors. Stay healthy, guys.
Twin Doctors TV. Educate, inspire, entertain. Follow us at www.twindoctorstv.com and on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Stay healthy. Bye now.